Hello everyone. Welcome to Deku Universe. Today we are beginning What If Female Deku Was Cafe Owner. The fanfiction is created by Sky Uclipse on fanfiction.net. Now let's begin. Izumi, yeah I know, totally original name, was lost physically and mentally. Physically she was wandering down the bad part of Mustafa, I think that's what the city is called that Izuku lives in, and was just walking with no destination in mind, wandering around while the sun was setting behind her. Mentally she was broken. She couldn't stop seeing the horrible stuff that happened not even 12 hours ago. 12 hours ago pain. That's all Izumi felt as soon as she walked into her first day of her last year in middle school. As soon as she walked in she imminently was met with an explosion to the left side of her face. "Ha! Take that you useless Deku!" yelled her tormentor and her ex-best friend Katsuki Baku. "What are you going to do? Fight back with your Quirk. Oh right, your Quirk is so useless, you Demon Deku." Imagine present Mike's voice saying this stuff. Katsuki Bakugu Quirk. Explosion. It allows the user to sweat a nitroglycerin-like substance and make it explode on will. The explosion power increases with the amount he sweats. Side effect. The more used, the more water used in the user's body, resulting in dehydration and heat slide symptoms. Izumi Midoriya Quirk. Vibe Reader. It allows the user to see what kind of vibe a person has. These vibes are seen as different colors so that Izumi knows what each color stands for. Example: All Might's vibe when he's in hero form gives off a friendly and powerful vibe, so his vibe to Izumi is a dark yellow. Side effect. The larger the Quirk is used in scale terms, the more the user's eyes start to bleed. Izumi looks up to her ex-friend and uses her Quirk. When she does, she sees the vibe color for rage, dark red, and malice, bright purple. "Kei-chan, what are you planning on doing to me?" Izumi asks in a shaky voice. "Well, since you asked." Katsuki's face grew into a wide grin as he picked Izumi up by the hair and pulled her off the ground to meet his face. Izumi is 5 foot and Katsuki is 5 feet 6 inches in this story. Why don't you take a swan dive off of a roof and wish for a good Quirk on the next life? Izumi's face falters as she hears her ex-friend say this to her. Besides, this way, Auntie won't have to deal with a useless Deku like you anymore. Once Katsuki sees the distressed look on Izumi's face, he starts laughing like a madman. "You can't say that, Kei-chan." Izumi trembles as she says this to Katsuki while he's still holding her in the air. "You see, can't tell someone to kill themselves. That would make why you look like a villain." Katsuki's face darkens as he hears those words and is prepared to give the useless Deku the beating of her life. At the same time, Izumi uses her Quirk and her right eye starts bleeding from the sheer force of Katsuki's rage vibe. "What did you say? You useless thief!" Katsuki yells as he tosses her in the air and releases a powerful explosion to her already damaged left side of her face. The explosion sends her flying across the schoolyard and out of the school gates. "I'm not a villain, you Demon Deku!" Katsuki roars into the air as Izumi lands on the ground outside the school gates. "I will be the #1 hero and you will always be beneath my feet." Once Katsuki is done, he angrily stomps off to his homeroom, leaving Izumi motionless on the ground outside. This feeling. Izumi finally understands this word. Her entire left side of her face feels raw. It feels like it's in pain. Izumi barely gets up and looks into her half-destroyed bag and pulls out a long piece of green cloth and carefully wraps it around the left side of her face. When Izumi is done, she grabs the remains of her bag and just limps home to greet her mother and ask her what to do. 1 hour later, smoke. Why was there the smell of smoke coming from the direction of her house? With that thought of her house burning, she took into a sprint, choosing to ignore the burning of her legs in favor of making sure her house, and more importantly her mother, wasn't being burnt down. When she got there, she saw the face of the #2 hero, Endeavor, standing on top of a villain, in front of Izumi's burning house. Izumi yelled at the top of her lungs, yelling at the house, hoping with all her soul her mother would return her desperate call. "Tisk." Izumi heard Endeavor says as she looked up to see the burning hatred in his eyes as he picked up the criminal he just knocked out before looking at the house he just set ablaze. "Stupid woman. If you had been strong you wouldn't have died. Izumi froze when she heard that. Her mother had died and it was his fault. Endeavor looks down as he slightly smirks. Congrats, villain, you have a fire quirk so you can cover for me and take the fall of killing this family. He says as he looks to a slightly burnt mailbox. The Midoriyas, huh? Well, looks like I have to report them dead now to the Hero Commission. After Endeavor is done monologuing, he walks away and leaves the rest to the police and firefighters. When she hears this, she hears Endeavor mutter, "If anyone saw me do this, well, I wouldn't mind bringing them down for false rumors." Endeavor chuckles to himself as he disappears from eyesight. Izumi was terrified. She just saw her house burn down and heard the number 2 hero admit to himself that he burned down the house and was going to blame it on the villain and mutter that he will kill anyone who said any false rumors about this accident. So Izumi did the only logical thing in her mind at the moment. Run and don't stop running. Back to the present, Izumi's mind was on autopilot. She was just walking with no destination in mind while she tried to figure out what to do. Should she go to Kachin's house and figure stuff out? No, he hates her. Should she report what happened at her house today? No, she was terrified of Endeavor killing her in an accident. Should she? And here's Japan's daily death count, said a reporter on an old TV across the street. Curious of what's on the list, she goes over to it and sees something she will regret. Names: Inko Midoriya, Izumi Midoriya. This isn't right. Did Endeavor report her as dead? Now she can't risk using her name unless she wants to draw the wrath of the number 2 hero. She was alone. So alone. As she turns around to leave, she sees a sign that reads, "Building open to anyone. Do whatever with it. Has 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, bar, kitchen, and lounge. I guess I'll take it for now." Izumi mutters to herself as she rips off the sign and opens the door. When Izumi steps inside, she sees the lounge. It's pretty big, Izumi thinks to herself. She looks to the side and sees the bar with the kitchen entrance behind it. To the side she sees a staircase she figures that leads to the bedrooms, so she heads toward the staircase. As she is about to walk up, she sees a door, so she opens it and she sees a nice bathroom. It's not fancy, but it isn't old and dirty as well. It's somewhere in the middle. When Izumi ascends the staircase, she sees 3 doors, each leading to a bedroom. Izumi opens one at a time till she finds the bedroom that has the bathroom attached to it, and makes that her bedroom. This place. Can this be my thoughts? Good morning. Oh yeah, she's gone now. Izumi says bitterly to herself as she remembers the fire from yesterday. Damn you, Endeavor, for taking away my mom. Izumi starts to cry with tears streaming down her face. She notices that only right eye is actually crying. And after Izumi stops crying, she goes over to her bathroom and then takes off the bandages to the left side of her face to reveal a half-burnt and half-raw skinless mess with a white orb in the eye slot. Then I can't see anything out of this eye. I need to keep this side of my face hidden. After Izumi rewards her left side of the face, she walks down the stairs to inspect the other parts of the house. When she exits the stairs, she goes to the downstairs bathroom and sees it's identical to the one upstairs. Next, Izumi inspects the lounge. It has 6 booths that can fit 4 people each without having to pull up chairs. There are a total of 12 tables, 4 of which are long and can fit 6 people in chairs, 4 can fit 4 people, and the last 4 can fit 2 people. There are stacks of chairs pushed off the side in stacks of 10, and when Izumi is done counting, she sees 50 chairs. All in all, there's a lot of space for people to sit and either eat or chat. Izumi then moves to inspect the bar. What she sees is a classic bar, a long bar counter that doesn't have any damages to it, with 12 stools positioned around the outside of it. On the inside of the bar there's space for tons of stuff, but it's empty right now. There are tons of cabinets to put things in, and there's space for a register to go without having to boot anyone from the bar stools. Izumi then moves to the last room, the kitchen. It's about half the size of a kitchen you'd expect from a popular restaurant. It has 2 fridges, 2 freezer, 3 microwaves, a sink, an oven, and a giant pantry. Okay, so this place has all the necessary things for living, including electricity and running water. If I had to guess, whoever lived here wanted to open a cafe. Well, since I'm technically dead, I can do whatever with my life now. Izumi summed it up to herself. DMN, that depressing. I'm dead, and I'm going to open a cafe. Well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to make it a cafe for everyone. Over the next hour, Izumi searched the entire cafe area for money and found around $200 in the register. That's so suspicious. But it's not like anyone's coming back for it, so I'll use it for myself and the cafe. Under the cash in the register, Izumi found a card that had a computer address that's to an illegal food website. When Izumi sees this paper, she takes to the computer she saw upstairs and orders some of the weird stuff people eat like BLD, flesh, body parts, etc. After Izumi is done with this, she takes some black signs she finds so suspicious and starts writing down some rules for her cafe. And after much thought, Izumi decided to call her cafe Kissedin Cafe. Here are what the signs say. Welcome to Kissedin Cafe. This cafe is a gray zone. Because it's a gray zone, when someone enters this cafe, there are no such things as villains, heroes, vigilantes, or notions of quirk discrimination. When someone enters this cafe, you are just a person. The exceptions to this are people on the banned list, see inside, and people who stay to rob the cafe. We serve anyone who comes in, and we serve anything within reason. Banned list: those who are on the banned list are not allowed inside and will be kicked out. If said person/people refuse, then members of the staff will have to use force. People on the banned list: Katsuki Bakugo Endeavor, random destructive villain. After she is done with the signs, she needs to decide what to tell people her quirk is, her appearance, and what her new name is going to be. My name is going to be simple for now. I'll just go by Izuku for now till I find a better name. Izumi decides. My quirk, I never liked the name Vibe Reader, and the name and description are so wrong. My quirk is actually more like an emotion reader. Present Mike's voice name, Izuku, previously known as Izumi Midoriya. Quirk, emotion reader. This quirk allows the user to see a person's emotions whenever the quirk is activated. Example: happy is yellow, rage is dark red, malice is bright purple, bloodlust is deep crimson, and disgust is dark green. Drawbacks: if overused, the user's eye starts to bleed. The more intense or the more range of the emotion the user is viewing, the more intense the bleeding. Now for my appearance. I'll keep the bandages and say it was an accident. For my hair, I'll go to a store and buy a forest green hair dye, but I'll use the hoodie to hide my face. But I'll have to change my hair. I think I'll go with a pixie cut. Izumi then goes to the store and buys the hair dye and other hair stuff, including scissors. When she gets to her new home, Izumi cuts her hair to a pixie cut style and then uses the upstairs bathroom to dye her hair. After about 2 days, Izumi is ready to open. After about an hour sitting behind the counter, the front door bell rings and Izumi's head perks up. When she looks at the door, she finds a wide grinning girl with blonde hair pulled into a bun, a tan school uniform, one that Izumi didn't recognize, and BLD splattered all over her. Hello, what can I get for you? Izumi asks politely, choosing to ignore the BLD on this crazy-looking girl. The girl takes a second to adjust to this sudden kindness before responding. Hi, I'm Toga, and I saw on the sign that this is a gray zone, right? Toga asks hesitantly. Yes, we do. What can I get for you? Izumi asks with the same level of kindness while turning on her quirk. When she activates her quirk, she sees a mix of bloodlust, happiness, and a trace of sadness. Hi, can I get some BLD? Please. Toga asks hesitantly. Izumi returns the question with a smile. Sure, can do, I'll be right back. But before I go, please read the rules for this gray zone cafe. Izumi then heads into the kitchen to grab one of the bags of BLD she illegally bought. Rules: okay. Where are they? Here they are. So this is a cafe for everyone, including heroes. Toga then squints her eyes at the sign, rereading after she sees the heroes part. Here you go. Here's your pouch of BLD, Izumi says as she looks at Toga again with her quirk activated. What she sees is anger, disgust, and for some reason, fear. Thanks, but can I ask you a question? Toga asks with a bit of caution in her voice as she looks at the waiter in her. Sure, ask away. And call me Izuku like my tag says. Izumi says with no trace of sarcasm or anger. Is this a true gray zone? Why is the cafe literally called Cafe Cafe? And can I get a job here? If I can, do I really have immunity here? Toga asks all the questions she wants to ask. Well, that's a lot of questions, but here we go. Izumi then takes a deep breath and continues. Yes, this a true gray zone, or everyone who isn't banned or tries to rob the place. It's called Kissedin Cafe because I really like the kanji language. Yes, you can get a job here, but you need to complete an interview with me. And yes, as stated with the gray zone question, anyone who comes in here has immunity from the outside if they are not banned or tries to rob the place. Can I take the interview now? Toga asks hesitantly. Yes, you can, please follow me. As Izumi turns around, she uses her quirk again. Toga emotions are fear, worry, and happiness. As Izumi leads Toga to the kitchen, she sits down on a stool that is across a table from another stool. Okay, so before I begin asking questions, you may ask a question of me. Izumi says as she looks at Toga with her eye. I do have one. What happened to that side of your face? Toga asks as she points at the left side of Izumi's face. Oh, this. It was an accident that resulted in this side of my face being burned and much worse and losing my sight in the eyeball. Izumi says as she puts a hand over the left side of her face. But enough of that, on to the interview. So question 1. Have you killed anyone, and if so have been recorded doing so? Toga stays silent for a bit before answering. Yes, I have killed only 2 times, and no, I have not been recorded. Izumi nods slowly as she gets on to the next question. Okay, so question 2. Does your quirk have any bad drawbacks, like BLD addictions, weird eating habits, self-harming, etc.? Toga again stays silent for a good minute before responding. Yes, my quirk makes me crave BLD. After not feeding my quirk for so long, it makes me crave BLD like crazy. Izumi again nods and calmly responds. Not a problem, I have plenty of BLD bags in storage. But anyways, on to the last question. Izumi's posture and attitude all of a sudden change as she continues. What is your opinion on quirk discrimination? Izumi asks with a very dangerous tone in her voice while she activates her quirk and seems to stare into her soul. Toga shivers at the harsh look Izuku is giving her. Well. It's stupid in my opinion. Izumi raises an eyebrow at Toga and sees through her quirk that Toga's emotions are rage, fury, fear, and sadness. Explain. Well, you see. My quirk allows me to transform into other people, but I require their BLD to do so. Because of that fact, I was labeled a villain by others unplugging my parents. So to reiterate my answer, quirk discrimination is BS and no one should be judged by their quirk. Toga huffs and huffs after finishing that sentence. Izumi uses her quirk last time to make sure Toga isn't lying. When Izumi assures herself she is telling the truth, Izumi stands up and says, Thank you for answering honestly, and I have to agree, quirk discrimination is total BS. So Toga. Izumi then sticks out her hand. Welcome to the family, Toga. The job is yours. Izumi says with a sincere smile. Toga's eyes start to water and turns into full-on crying as no one has ever shown her this level of sincere kindness. Thank you, Izuku. And thank you for welcoming me to this job. Izumi then pulls Toga into a hug and says, You're welcome, and for now on this will be your home as well. But thank you, Izuku. Thoughts? Izumi and Toga have been slowly growing in customers, mainly consisting of vigilantes and some villains. There were a few times a random weak hero would walk in and try to make a scene saying stuff like, This is an illegal villain cafe. Or, everyone, get on the ground, hidden villains. Only to have Izumi point out it's a gray zone for everyone and to say this is her place. If the hero still resists, Izumi then tells Toga to remove the hero, and 10 minutes later, Toga leaves the hero outside in an alley and leaves them with amnesia, drained of some of their BLD, and is put on the banned list. Because it kept on happening, Izumi put an extra rule into the banned list. If a person resists to leave and is on the banned list, people in the bar are able to engage with permission from a worker to remove the annoyance with minimal quirk usage. There were two respectful heroes who didn't do anything and just chatted with people and ordered some food and drinks. Unfortunately, due to the unwanted attention of some hostile heroes, Izumi goes to an online site and fully registers her cafe as a gray zone and the fact they have a banned list, with all of the cafe's rules. Hey Izuku, should we put up a sign outside that says help is needed? Toga asks Izumi out of curiosity, while they are closing down for the night. No, if people want to help they need to ask and I have to interview them. I need to know they are trustworthy and that they themselves hate quirk discrimination. Izumi responds but seems to be upset when she says the quirk part. Oh yeah Izuku, you never told me your quirk after I told you about my quirk transform. Present mic voice name, Himiko Toga quirk. Transform. It allows the user to transform into other people, completely identical to that person including their clothes, but after the user transforms back to their original state the clothes melt away. Drawbacks. To transform the needs to drink some of their target's BLD. How long the user can transform before the form melts away depends on how much of the BLD the user drinks. The user can store the BLD in their quirk for an unknown amount of time. Oh yeah, my quirk is called Emotion Reader. It's basically self-explanatory, but if I overuse it my eye starts to bleed. Izumi says as she self-consciously covers her damaged left side of her face. Hey Izuku. What happens if someone discovers that me and you are technically villains? Toga asks out of worry. We don't need to worry about it. On paper I'm just a girl who came out of nowhere and started a gray zone cafe, and for you you are a girl that ran away after your parents were murdered and ended up taking a job here. Izumi says with no worry in her voice. But in reality I'm a girl who received heavy amounts of quirk discrimination from everyone except my mother. But one day a popular hero burned down my house with my mother in it, chasing down a villain, and then reported me dead to the world. And for you Toga, you killed your parents cause of the quirk discrimination you received and ran away afterwards. Izumi lets out a sigh and continues. So no, I'm not worried about anyone finding us out without them knowing the full story, and that will backfire HRD on the hero commission. Toga then grins as she hugs the green head from behind. Izumi is 5 foot and Toga is 5 feet 2 inches in this story. You're right Izuku. We have no reason to worry. Thanks for soothing my woes. You're welcome Toga-chan. Izumi and Toga both smile as they close down the cafe for the night. The next morning. POV. We go to a guy who is pacing outside the cafe. The mysterious guy has black hair with no particular style, what looks like burn marks all around his body, although his clothes, most of them except some on his arms and the noticeable big one on his face that goes from under one eye to the other seeming to go around all around his face. He is wearing black jeans, a white t-shirt and a black jacket that is unzipped. So this place is a gray zone, huh? Let's see what this place has to offer and see if it's true. The man says as he walks into the cafe. Hello and welcome to Kissedin Cafe. What can I get for you? Asks a girl that has forest green hair that is cut short and is dressed in a green cafe uniform and a green skirt. But the most noticeable thing about her is the left side of her face is wrapped in green cloth, implying that she was in an accident recently or she is still healing from a bad injury. Yes, can I get some hot soba? The man asks the green head that has a name tag that reads, Izuku. Sure, and while I get that, feel free to look around the cafe and at the rules and such. Izuku said as she turned around and headed into a different room that he assumed was the kitchen. Oh right, what can I put down for your name? Izuku asked politely. Put down Dobby. Dobby responded. Okay, I'll be back. Izuku then disappeared into the other room. Dobby then proceeds to look around and try to find the rules but can't find them. Then he noticed a girl in a similar uniform like Izuku's, but this girl had a tan and red version of the uniform. Excuse me, miss. Yes, how may I help you? The girl turned around to reveal that she had her blonde hair in 2 buns on her head and a name tag that said, Toga. Can you point me to where the rules of the cafe are stated? Dobby tries not to sound annoyed at not finding it. Sure, it's right beside the door. Toga says as she heads to another table to help another customer. Beside the door. Of course it is there. Dobby then turns and heads to the door. Okay, so rules. Gray zone rules are the same as other gray zones, so that's simple. Okay, the banned list. Rules are simple. Oh, there are people already banned. Let's see. Some named Bakugo, some random heroes, and Endeavor. Wait, what? Dobby does a double take when he sees that name. When he's sure he sees Endeavor's name, he hears Izuku say his name. He runs over to her and says, "Is it true?" Dobby almost yells out at Izuku. "Is what true?" Izuku asks as her eye starts to glow. It's probably her quirk, but I'll ask later. Dobby thinks as he refocused. Is it true that Endeavor is banned from this place? Dobby asks with a bit of desperation in his voice. Izuku's face darkens as she says in a tone that is completely different from the cheery tone she previously had. That flaming trash hero is never ever welcome to this cafe. Izuku then turns back to her cheerful persona. We don't want someone burning down a peaceful place like this for no reason now, do we? Izuku says with a bit of anger in her voice, "Job? What, Ash? I want a job here. If that flaming trash can't enter this place without repercussions, I want a job." Dobby says as Izuku studies him with her glowing eye for a few seconds, and the glow goes away, and Izuku says, "Sure, just follow me and I'll ask you some questions. Toga, take care of things for a bit. I'll be in the kitchen." She then turns around and heads into the other room with Dobby following her. Out of POV, Izumi and Dobby are now sitting in the back of the kitchen, across from each other from a table. Alright, so first question. Izumi asks in a neutral tone. What is your name or alliance, and what is your quirk's name? Descriptions and drawbacks are not necessary. Izumi still says in a neutral tone. Name's Dobby and my quirk name is Cremation. Dobby responds. Present Mike's voice name, Dobby quirk, Cremation. This quirk allows the user to summon the most powerful natural flames known to mankind. The flames are so hot they can melt/burn almost anything. Drawbacks. The quirk is so powerful that it burns the user whenever the user uses it. I see you have a powerful quirk, huh? Anyways, on to question 2. If you were to get this job, what would you do here? Izumi asks, still in a neutral zone. If I got this job, I could do the drinks since you and the other employee are still young, and I could also be a bodyguard of sorts, I guess. Dobby responded true fully because that's exactly the type of job that is right up his alley. Izumi smiles at that response. Okay, then on to question 3. Izumi's face then darkens again and activates her quirk, making her eye glow bright green, and Dobby could swear the air got thicker. What is your honest opinion on quirk discrimination? Dobby gulps after hearing that, and he starts to panic a bit. SHT, that's a loaded question. If I answer it wrong, then I'll probably be kicked out or banned if my response is that bad. Dobby takes a minute to compose his thoughts as Izumi just seems to stare into his soul with her glowing eye. My opinion on quirk discrimination is that it's a load of bull SHT. No one should be judged on their quirk, whether they have a strong quirk, weak quirk, mutant quirk, or a villain's quirk. It's all stupid. Dobby takes a minute to catch his breath, and he looks at Izumi to see if she is done judging him. After another 10 seconds, the glow disappeared, and Izumi takes a long sigh before looking at Dobby with a cheerful smile. My thoughts exactly. Quirk discrimination is really stupid. Izumi then sticks out her hand to Dobby and says, Congrats, you just got the job. You can start tomorrow as a bartender and help whenever we get unwanted visitors. Izumi says with a warm smile. Dobby then grins, thinking to himself, at least here the flaming trash can't reach me. Hee hee, as he then shakes Izumi's hand and says, Thanks, can't wait to start this new beginning. Time skipped to 6 months before the UA entrance exam begins. The Kissedin Cafe has been open for roughly 3 months now. By this time, Izumi, Toga, and Dobby are all living in the rooms upstairs. Izumi and Toga both revealed their past to Dobby, who was the most shocked at Izumi's story because of the whole Endeavor burning down her house with her mother in it and then being reported as dead by Endeavor. Dobby revealed his true name to both Izumi and Toga, but nothing else. Izumi also revealed that she is a quirk genius and that she had 13 books of just notes on heroes, which Toga and Dobby find insane, and that she already started recreating them and was adding some of the vigilantes and villains into the pages of her books. Izumi has also told them about how some detectives and underground heroes might come and investigate the cafe. "Hey boss," Dobby says to Izumi as she turns around. "There's someone on the roof across from the cafe." Izumi chuckles. "I know, Dobby, let the hero come in whenever they want. It's probably going to be our first underground hero to visit us, so let's be on our guard, okay guys?" K-Boss/Izu. Dobby and Toga respond as they all get back to work. POV, we head to said person standing on top of the rooftop across from the cafe. The person is dressed in a black jumpsuit, has a white belt on, gray shoes, a custom-made safety goggles that are slitted so the user can see but others can't tell where they are looking, and most noticeably are the long whitish-silverish colored scrap that wrapped several times around the user's neck but is loose enough to prevent breathing problems. Tsukachi, this is Eraserhead. I'm currently overseeing the new gray zone that is posing as a cafe. I'm going to go in and engage the workers to see if there is evil intent at play. Eraser out. Eraserhead said into a walkie-talkie that went to the head of the detective's apartment no Mesa, Tsukachi. Eraser then jumps down into a nearby alleyway and walks toward the gray zone cafe. When Eraser gets to the door, he notices the welcoming sign and continues to read it. When he is done, he notes down that there are exceptions to this gray zone, and those are people on the banned list, need to check that out later, and those who try to rob the cafe or those who disturb the peace by trying to arrest everyone and or try to destroy the place. Take 1. So far all normal gray zone stuff but with some more restrictions. But the restrictions are to make it a peaceful environment for everyone. Take over. Eraser says into a recorder he placed in his scarf to hide it from others. Take 2. There was a part that I almost missed on the front sign. It says that all information learned here is confidential and that the staff are not responsible for what happens after said info gets out. Interesting. Take over. Eraser then proceeds to enter the cafe. When Eraser enters, he sees the lounge is mainly consisting of some no-name vigilantes and some low-tier villains, none of whom Eraser has had a run-in with. "Hello, what can I get for you?" Eraser turns around to see a blonde girl with her hair pulled into 2 buns walk over to him. The girl was wearing a tan and red outfit that Eraser assumed was the cafe's uniform. "Yes, can I get a mug of black coffee, please?" Eraser asks the blonde girl, who he sees has a name tag that reads, Toga. "Sure, I'll get right away, but while I do that feel free to take a look around, Eraserhead." Toga then skips to the bat to grab the coffee. Take 3. Just gave my order to a member of the staff. Somehow they knew my hero identity. Going to have to be more cautious from here. Take over. Eraser says as he looks at the walls, still worried because of someone who he never met before, let alone a teenager knew his hero name even though he is an underground hero. Eraser then moves over to a wall where he sees a paper titled, The Banned List. Eraser looks at it while taking some mental notes. He pauses at the people's names on the banned list. A bunch of random villains and some random heroes which I assume are on there because of what the sign said out front. But these first 2 names. Katsuki Bakugo. Isn't he one of the kids taking the entrance exam in 6 months? What did he do to get banned from here? Aizawa made a mental note to check that out later. Endeavor. Why the hell is Endeavor on here? I'll have to ask the staff about that. Eraser was imagining what kind of responses the staff will have to that question. Take 4. Just looked at the list of people who are banned from the gray zone. Mainly some no-name villains or some low-rank heroes, but only 2 names stood out. Those are Katsuki Bakugo, a potential UA student, and the number 2 hero Endeavor. Going to engage a different staff member to at least find out about the reason behind Endeavor. Take over. Eraser then heads to the next person who has a variation of the cafe's uniform. That person being a heavily scarred man, dressed in a black and blue version of the cafe uniform, who is cleaning a glass that someone left behind. "Excuse me, sir, can I ask you some questions about the banned list?" The man looked up to reveal their name tag that read Dobby. "Sure, what's your question, Eraserhead?" Dobby asked as he put the glass back on the wall. "Another member of the staff knows my hero name, but they are keeping their voices down so as to not draw attention." Good. "Yes, can I ask about what the number 2 hero did to get banned from this gray zone?" The bartender Dobby seemed to stop what he was doing for a second before responding in a harsh tone. The number 2 hero has ruined the lives of many people in different ways. From abuse to straight up during down homes. And it's not even hidden, the news literally shows scenes of the fights and they don't hide the collateral damage that flaming trash brings in his wake. Dobby takes a deep breath before continuing. The point is we can't have a fake hero like that coming here and burning down the place, possibly with people inside. Dobby then mumbles, again, or blaming it on the villain he's chasing. After hearing everything Dobby said, including the again part, Eraser says, "Okay, thanks for your time." Eraser leaves to hear that his black coffee is ready. After sitting down and grabbing his coffee, Eraser does another take. Take 5. Just had an interesting conversation with another member of the staff that knew my hero name. They said some interesting stuff about Endeavor, going to have to check it out later to see if it's true or not. Sipping noise DMN, this coffee is really good. Take over. After Eraser finished his coffee, he decided he would have a conversation with the last remaining member of the staff that seems to be the one who cooks the food. Hey Greenhead. Eraser calls out to the staff member with the green hair after she delivers some food to a customer. Yes, how can I help you, Eraserhead? The greenhead turns around to reveal that she has almost her entire left side of her face covered in cloth, implying she got a recent bad injury or is still recovering from a bad injury. But beside that, she had a dark green version of the cafe uniform and a name tag that read Izuku. Why do all the staff members seem to know my hero name? But that's not a real first or last name, probably an alias. Yes, can I ask you your opinion on why this gray zone and why it's a cafe? Eraser asks the girl, wanting to at least leave with one question solved. Sure, this cafe was made so that it can serve to anyone, and not be judged by titles like hero, vigilante, or villain. As the sign outside states, everyone who walks into this gray zone is just a person, with the exception of the banned list and other stuff. The girl, Izuku, responds and Eraser figures that she might be the owner. Thanks for your time and I'll come back soon for some more coffee. It's delicious. Eraser grudgingly says as he leaves. When Eraser is at least 3 blocks away, he starts his last take. Take 6. I have just left after talking to the last employee, who I assume is the boss based on how they answered my question of why the cafe was built as a gray zone. Going to have to do some research on the 3 employees and some of the stuff they did so I get my head wrapped around the chaos that might unfold later. Take over. Eraser sighs as he races over the rooftops toward his home. When he enters, he goes straight to his sleeping bag and lays down while he makes a call to Tsukachi. Hey Neo Mesa, it's me, Eraserhead. I'm leaving this voicemail to tell you that I'm going to have to do some research on some of the staff and some of the stuff they said while I was there. This might be either a straightforward 100% legal gray zone, or it might be a lot more complicated. It's probably going to be a mix of both. Eraser out. He says as he hangs up his phone. He sighs as he crawls into his sleeping bag like the sleep-deprived caterpillar he is. This is going to be a pain in my butt, isn't it? Miles Yamai, also known as the Hero Infector, was a simple guy. He loved the privileges that came with being a hero. He especially loves how he could get away with using his quirk on others and taking them down in the name of justice, and he can get away with it. So he goes on his normal routine. Wake up, do hero work, sign autographs, and sleep. One day he was expecting a walk home, but he didn't expect this. Please stop. I don't want to be killed, you monsters. The bleeding hero runs across a rooftop but comes to the ledge, with no place to go but down. 70 feet down to certain death. Please stop. I don't want to die, spare me please. The hero cries when he sees he can't escape the current situation. The man looks across the rooftop when 2 individuals hop down from an adjacent tall building. The 2 people chasing are part of an info broker/vigilante group that appeared out of nowhere about a week ago. The 2 that are currently chasing him are known as Vampire and Viridian. Vampire is dressed in a knee-high, 7th short-sleeve BLD red dress, some weird arm bracers thing that seemed to hold an assortment of weapons, long red socks, and a pair of red combat boots. Her eyes were both bloody red, her face was grinning wide, revealing her sharp vampiric teeth, and her bob-cut red hair floating a bit, giving off a very bad vibe. She is currently wielding a pair of sharp longish daggers that have proven extra sharp via how well they cleanly ripped through the hero's skin. Viridian, on the other hand, wore a black undershirt that is covered by a long Viridian green kimono, a sword's sheath on her back that is on her bottom back and it's sideways so she has to draw it from her right side. Her legs are covered by a baggy Viridian green dress, pants, and a pair of similar Viridian green combat boots. Her eyes were the most distinguished part of her. The left eye was a blackish green and the right one was a bright glowing green, while the rest of her face was covered by a Viridian green mask, with her long black hair flowing behind her. She is currently wielding an 18-inch razor-thin katana. Well, looks like you have run out of room to run. You shouldn't have run and just retired like we said to do, Infector. Viridian mocked as she and her partners slowly approached the wounded hero. Why isn't my quirk working on you two? Infector yelled out as the two who had been chasing him should be killing each other by now out of sheer madness. I'm well aware of your quirk, Rage Impulse. Those words caused the hero's eyes to widen. Like how I also know about you using your quirk on the innocent and how that would get your hero license cancelled as well as your family to leave you. But you wouldn't listen. If you had taken our offer and retired peacefully, we wouldn't have to leak out your wrongdoings. Viridian seemed to give off an evil grin through her mask. No. You can't do that. You both should be trying to kill each other out of pure madness, so why aren't you killing each other by now? Infector roared out, trying to figure out why in the world his quirk wasn't working on them. That answer is simple. Vampire let out a soft chuckle as she seemed to appear in front of Infector. Your quirk doesn't affect those whose minds are already gone past the breaking point. Vampire says as she delivers a knockout blow to Infector's stomach. Tried to warn the idiot, but they never listen, do they? Vampire lets out a loud chuckle as she whips out a large needle contraption and sticks that in the hero's arm and starts sucking the BLD out while she does the same with her teeth to his neck. And, yes, they're all idiots. When we present our info to them and give them options, they always pick the options that are either fight or flight. Seriously, why don't people realize that we have info on them and know how to take them down if they choose to fight or flight? Viridian complains as she puts her sword back in sheath and pulls out some duct tape and ties the hero's hands and legs together. That doesn't matter. If they ignore our offer, we get to beat them up and release the info on them anyways. Anonymously, of course, as to get caught. Vampire says as she pulls out a handkerchief from her dress and cleans her mouth while retracting the needle from the man's arm, and the sound of cop sirens can be heard from a couple blocks away. Well, that's our question to leave. Shall we, Vampire? Viridian asks as she takes Vampire's hand and leaps off the edge as they disappear into the darkness. 2 weeks ago, hey Izuku. Toga practically bounces over to Izumi, who is cleaning the tables for the night. Yes, Toga, what's going on? Izumi asks, knowing that Toga either wants to ask a question or show her something. Or something of both. Look, it's Stainy. Toga energetically points to the TV showing a picture of Stain about to kill a low-rank hero. Yeah, that hero was only taking on low-rank villains and sending them to the hospital with multiple broken bones. They deserve it if you ask me. Izumi says, continuing to clean off the tables as Dobby cleans the bar and counts the cash earned today. Toga thinks about that for a while before her face grins wildly, before grabbing Izumi. Izuku, I have an idea. Why don't we use that smart brain of yours and find those fakes and take them out with or without injuries? Toga, I don't let me finish. All of us can form an info broker/vigilante type of group and go out and reduce the amount of fakes without drawing too much attention from the heroes. And if you complain about not having any combat experience, I can teach you how to use a sword I got from a kill recently. Toga says, hoping to seal the deal. There's no convincing you otherwise, is there? Izumi sighs as Toga nods her head really fast as Izumi turns her head toward Dobby. Hey Dobby, you okay with this idea? Izumi calls out. Yeah, it's been a while since I let loose on some heroes. Dobby says as his left hand bursts into flames. Fine, but I have some conditions. Toga furiously nods, wanting to hear Izumi's input. So first, There's concealing our identities, we need wigs for everyone and a misleading outfit design to suggest a different quirk than the ones we have, besides Dobby since there's tons of dangerous flame quirks out there. Dobby gave a betrayed look toward Izumi before sighing and nodding. Okay then now for the second condition, you must teach me how to wield a sword and teach me some parkour, but enough to where I don't hurt myself. And those are my only 2 conditions for now. Izumi says waiting to see the others' responses. If those are your conditions then I'm in as well, I've got nothing better to do anyways. Dobby says returning to cleaning the bar while grinning like a madman. I'm down. Now let's finish the cleanup then Dobby and I will teach you some parkour and sword wielding K. Toga asks practically, vibrating with her golden eyes shining in anticipation. Why of course let's get this started. Izumi smiles brightly at Toga and Dobby as they close down the cafe for the night and go into an abandoned part of the downtown part of the bar district. For the next week Toga taught Izumi how to fight with a sword practicing against Toga with her knives. Dobby taught Izumi some hand-to-hand combat and how to deal with those with fire quirks. Both Toga and Dobby taught Izumi some parkour. By the end of the week Izumi was intermediate in sword play and hand-to-hand combat, and she is able to jump long distances and jump from rooftop to rooftop without slowing down. Alright, tonight's the night we start our hunts. Right Dabu and Izuku? Toga jumps up and down due to her being extra excited. Yes, it is time for our hunts, but first let's introduce ourselves in our vigilante names. I'm Viridian. Izumi introduces herself in her vigilante outfit. She is wearing a black undershirt that is covered by a long Viridian green kimono. Her wraps were removed and a fake eye is in her eye socket with an blackish-green pupil. Her face is covered by a mask to hide most of the damage to her face. Her right eye has her real quirk activated making glow a bright light green. For her hair she is wearing a long smooth black-haired wig to cover up her short green hair. Her legs are covered up by baggy Viridian green dress pants, and her Viridian green combat boots have the neat feature where it can shoot out a long dagger blade out of the front end of the shoes for quick slices. And finally for Izumi's favorite part, her sword. The sword is positioned sideways on her back so she can draw it out with her right hand sideways so as to not waste time drawing it upwards. For anime fans, it's basically Rimuru Tempest style. I'll go next. My name shall be Vampire. Toga cheers as she does a pose with mouth open to reveal her sharp canines, giving off a big vampire vibe. Toga is wearing a long wavy elegant red dress that goes all the way to her knees. Her face is unchanged besides the hair which is a wig like Izumi's except it's short red hair with a bob cut hairstyle. Her legs are covered by long red socks that have multiple slots in them, along with a pair of red combat boots that does the same thing as Izumi's. Toga's favorite part of her outfit is that there are tons of hidden knives everywhere from hidden in her dress, some in the suits and the socks, to a pair of knives that can easily be grabbed from the boots. All in all she is armed with about 50 knives at any given moment. Alright last is my name. I'll be the pyromancer. Dobby declares, receive head nods from both Izumi and Toga telling him they approve of the name. Dobby is wearing a black t-shirt and a black and blue flamed over shirt. His face is covered in some makeup to give him a more, if you come closer I'll burn you alive, feel, with his hair being the same color but in a different style that makes it look like his hair's on fire. His legs are covered by a black and blue flame style dress pants and is wearing a pair of similar black combat boots like Toga and Izumi. Davy's favorite part are the gloves he is wearing. They and his clothes he is wearing are all really strong fire proths so he can set himself on fire with only having to risk burning himself. The gloves he has on are made so that can also help increase the flame's potency that come into contact with it so when he charges his big cremation blast he won't get burned and the attack will be so much more powerful. Alright, it's time for our first hunt. Our first target is a hero by the name of Whisker. They are a notorious hero that plays pranks on everyone, and that includes other heroes and civilians, and causes a lot of collateral damage in the process. I say we give them a visit shall we vampire, pyromancer. They all nod as they leap out of the bedroom window and into the rooftops to find their first target. That night went off without a hitch with Whisker ending up in an alleyway with multiple knife and sword wounds with his hands and some of his face having first-degree burns. That night the names Vampire, Viridian, and pyromancer went onto the list of Japanese vigilantes. To a secluded part of Tokyo, with a man running for dear life, gore warning, God damn it. Why are those two stupid mercenaries I hired are trying to kill me now? I'm a well-respected informant, and now I'm being chased down like a demon bunny. The man angrily thought to himself as he considered himself a powerful man. The man came around the corner only to find more of his men that he had sent to stop those two demons from killing him, only to be lying dead on the floor. Some are missing an entire section of their torso or an entire half of their chests, while others look like they were dismembered like a pair of Legos. God F damn it, why did it have to be devil and angel to go rouge on me? The unfortunate informant came to a dead end and there was no other place to go but back the way he came or go up. So instead of choosing the option where he will instantly die, he chooses to scale the wall. When he gets halfway up the wall he loses his grip and falls down. He managed to land but he landed weirdly on his left leg causing his ankle to break. Why are they chasing me? The informant screams in his head as he looks up in time to see a small object fly straight onto his injured ankle when he stands up again. Before he can even scream the object explodes, burning off his entire lower leg, leaving nothing left of it. The man screams from the sheer pain of having his leg burnt off, leaving no trace ever there. Through gritted teeth, the man looks up and sees a dark hooded figure standing at the end of the alleyway, staring at him with their eyes. One having a black iris and white pupil and the other having a white iris and black pupil. Devil found me. The man screamed in his head. So if they found me that means angel is in dash. The man's thoughts are interrupted by the feeling of having something move through his body. As he looks down he sees a golden and blue sword sticking out of his chest, while BLD starts to leave his mouth. The man turns around to see a woman with long blonde/golden hair and unnaturally acid green eyes, holding a sword hilt that is in his back with her sword going through his body. DMN you DMN mercenaries. The man lets out his last breath sliding down the sword and falling down, dead. You know, for a self-proclaimed powerful figure, he was a weak coward that had some information and hid behind those he hired. Devil, coldly said as they approached their partner Angel. Yeah, it was so boring nobody could even live after one strike and I barely even used my quirk. It's so sad. Angel complained as she swung her sword to the side, getting all the BLD flung off her sacred sword. Let's leave before the cops or heroes show up and see the massacre. Devil said as they hopped up the wall and onto the rooftops above, followed by Angel. 10 minutes later to a skyscraper nearby. There stood two figures known as Devil and Angel. Devil was dressed in all black clothing in order to travel without getting seen. The only notable thing about Devil is their mismatch eyes, one having a white iris and a black pupil with the other having a black iris and a white pupil. The only thing that isn't covered in black clothes their eyes and mouth. The gender of Devil is unknown as well as their quirk. Angel on the other hand has only a light layer of clothes on. A black t-shirt revealing a bit of her curves, black shorts, a pair of black shoes, and one of her legs has a long black sock that goes all the way up to her knee. One of the most notable things of her appearance is her long blondish golden hair reaching halfway down her back, and her acidic green eyes. Sad we had to kill the man, but what can you do? He was planning on burning down an orphanage and kidnapping all the kids and selling them off. Such a disgusting man he was, don't you agree, Devil? Angel asks her partners, slightly looking at them. It was a shame cause we have to go back to searching for an employer again. It's a pain in the butt not having any trustworthy people to rely on besides each other. Don't you agree? Devil asks Angel in a monotone voice. Very much so. Angel says as she continues to think of people they can trust before she realizes that there are none other than her partner. Oh come on, why can't our next employer just come to us instead of hunting for them? Angel complains as she hears a crinkling noise on Devil's leg. What this? Devil says as they pick up the paper and reads it, before smiling slightly. Looks like we got our wish, Angel. Devil says as they has Angel the paper as she reads it. When Angel's done reading, her face breaks into a wide grin as she tossed the paper off the side of the building. It does appear that way, huh? Let's go and stake out our possible employer. Shall we, Devil? Angel looks over to her partner and receives a nod as they both hop off the building and disappear. After a couple of minutes, the paper finally lands underneath a street lamp, revealing the paper to say, "Come to Kissedin Cafe, a gray zone. All are welcome. Need new hires if experienced." Ring ring ring. Shoyuta Aizawa, also known as Eraserhead, looks at the caller ID of who is calling him at 2 in the morning. The ID said, "Detective Tsukachi." Aizawa picks up the phone and answers it. "What is it this time, Tsukachi?" Aizawa answers, sounding every much annoyed. "Eraser, this is a massacre down here. We need your expertise to see if we can identify the culprits." Tsukachi said, used to Aizawa's grumpy attitude. Aizawa sighs before responding. "Send me the location and I'll be there as quickly as I can." Aizawa signs and rubs his temple due to him having a bad feeling this is one scene he shouldn't see. Half an hour later, at the scene of the massacre. "All right, what do we have here?" Aizawa asks as he arrives at the scene of the crime. "It's so much worse than what we first thought, Eraser. A total of 125 bodies littered through 10 blocks. Half of them are completely dismembered with body parts spread through the streets, and the other half are missing entire parts of their bodies. Some have holes through their chests, some are missing their heads, and some are missing limbs. But there is something else weird about this scene. This half the part that are missing are just gone, as if they were vaporized or something like that." Tsukachi said, trying to hold in the urge to throw up cause of the sheer wrongness with this massacre. "People dismembered and some seem to have vaporized parts. Tsukachi, I think I know who this is and I really hope this isn't the case, but tell me, are the dismembered people seems to be cut up by a blade and the vaporized ones have slight burn marks on them?" Aizawa asks as he gets a terrible déjà vu headache. "Yes, on both accounts, Eraser. How did you know that?" Tsukachi asks. "Eraser, are you okay?" Tsukachi turns around and sees Aizawa leaning against building holding his head. "Eraser." Flashback 7 years ago. Aizawa has been an underground hero for a year now. But this day would haunt him for as long as he lives. His unfortunate encounter with the two most powerful people he has ever seen. One had horns, one was white and the other pitch black, with the most ominous pair of mismatch eyes he has ever seen, what were a white iris and black pupil, and a black iris and white pupil. And the other person had a pair of glowing blue glass-like wings, long blondish golden hair, and acidic green eyes. This day would change him his view of life forever. Thoughts, flashback 7 years ago, Aizawa POV. It's been a year now since the death of Oboro. It's been stressful for me and Hisashi. I'm pretty sure that present Mike's real name. We lost our dear friend and they expect us to get over it and continue our hero work as if nothing happened. It's bullshit. But enough of that for now. I'm currently on an investigation with the head detective of Japan, Namesa Tsukachi. The investigation involves the massive murder scene. A well-known gang known as Vipers was murdered in a massive scale. Bodies were littered across the street and they were all missing body parts. Some were just dismembered limb from limb and others' limbs seemed to have just vaporized into thin air. The only suspects that Tsukachi could think of were a bunch of well-known villains or vigilantes. The problem is that none of the suspects would ever work together, especially on a massacre of this size. This is a giant mess, Eraserhead. I need your expertise to see if you can give some insight I might have missed. Tsukachi said as I pulled up to the disturbing murder scene. As I walked, I counted the bodies as I went. After I counted 100 and still saw a lot more, I turned to Tsukachi. "Tsukachi, how many bodies are there and how many members were in this gang?" I wanted to know if there were others of the gang that might be alive. "There are approximately 300 bodies here." My eyes widened because I thought that the number wasn't over half of that. The number of members of Vipers there were, according to the hero database, a little less than 350. I take a moment to think before my eyes go wide and I turn to Tsukachi. "I'm going to go scout the area to see if there are any other living members," I say as I rush to a small building and leap up and start running across rooftops. "It's unlikely any are still alive, but report back if you find any." Tsukachi yells at me as I race away. After about 10 minutes of running across rooftops, I hear an almost silent and sickening sound. It was like a weapon ripping through flesh. My eyes go wide as I race toward the sound. as I leaped down from a rooftop and landed. The scene was so disturbing that I immediately took a step back from the scene in front of me. The entire block was littered with bodies that were similar to the ones from earlier. Bodies and body parts were scattered around the city block, but that wasn't what scared me the most. It was the two figures in the middle of it that scared me to my soul. The one to the left had just swung a weird-looking golden and green-colored scythe/staff weapon and decapitated a man who was about to run away. This person was a female with long blonde golden hair and acidic green eyes that seemed to stare into one's soul. She was wearing a black t-shirt, black gloves, black shorts that go all the way to her knees, and one leg covered in a long black sock and the other leg has no coverage. The most notable thing about her was the pair of long glass-like wings stretching from her back, giving her a real angel vibe. The one to the right was more terrifying. Starting with the weapon in their hands, it was a pistol. When they shot it at another gang member, the left side of their body instantly vaporized and they fell to the ground dead. The killer was wearing all black clothing covering all of their body except the bottom part of their face and the two wings on their back. One wing was pitch black with a big white moon near the tip of the wing, while the other one wing was bright white with a big black sun near the tip of that wing. The most interning part of this person was their eyes, hair, and horns. Their left eye had a white iris and a black pupil, whereas the right eye had a black iris and white pupil. The left side of their hair was black with a bright white inward curved sticking out, and the right side of their hair was white with a pitch black inward curved horn sticking out. All in all, this one gave me a strong devil vibe. Well, looks like there is only one snake left, right, King Viper? Asked the left murderer, staring off to the left to man who was hanging from a lamppost and looked like they were barely alive. You and your gang have been a pain in the butt for too long, so we Angel and Devil have put all you snakes to sleep. The one I thought was Angel, because of the hair and the color, pointed her weird scythe/staff weapon at the leader, who widened his eyes as she tried to move, but for some reason he couldn't. Her partner Devil gives a deep sigh before giving Angel a side glare. You really need to stop trying with the prey. A pro hero is already here and I'm pretty sure they heard our code names right. Devil then turned their glare at me and continued to say, "SHOEAIWA. Devil says in a menacing tone that almost sounds like it was glitching. Deanie Racerhead is here already, that's sad. Well, let's finish this before more show up." Angel says as she seemed to disappear and reappears on the lamplight with her scythe put to the side like she just hit something. Then a fountain of blood burst out of the man's body as several pieces of his body fell to the ground completely dismembered. Disgusting man. Angel says as she flicks her scythe to the side and all the blood flies off of it. I was terrified. Just two people completely destroyed a 350-person gang. And I know for a fact. They weren't even taking this seriously. Hold it. Why, you just broke the law. I managed to stutter out and immediately regretted it as both Angel and Devil turned toward me and in a blink of an eye were in front of me before I could even activate my quirk. Aizawa, you may be one of the last true heroes, but if you even attempt to stop us, well, let's just say you will wish that you were dead. Devil says as they poke my eyes, causing me to reel back and fall on the ground in pain. By the time I managed to open my eyes again, I saw both Devil and Angel up in the air flying. Devil's mismatched eyes and Angel's acidic green eyes stared down at me as they took off, but not before both of them said, "We will purge the world of these fake hero ways. We will bring the world back to when things were right. If you oppose us, you will regret ever even thinking of stopping us." With that, they flew away at insane speeds. 10 minutes later, Aizawa, you're back. Did you find any clues on the killers? Tsukachi runs up to me with a hopeful tone before stopping when he sees the dead look on my face. Eraser. What happened? Tsukachi held me in place, staring at me until I would respond. For the first time since Oboro's death, I've felt the grip of death myself. I said in a low voice, but Tsukachi heard me and let go of me as I fell down while leaning on a wall. Erase. Tell me everything that happened in the 30 minutes that you were gone. Well, I did find the killers, but I then tell Tsukachi everything that happened to me in the few minutes that I had contact with Angel and Devil. Tsukachi takes a minute to process all of this before his eyes go wide and he looks at me with a worried expression. Eraser. Are you sure that they called themselves Devil and Angel, right? Tsukachi's eyes looked like they were pleading that he say anything other than yes and it would be true. I say as Tsukachi took his turn looking devastated and also slid down the wall next to me. Tell me, what do you know about Devil and Angel? I say like it's my turn to investigate him. Devil and Angel. They hold the position of number 6 and number 7 most dangerous mercenaries/vigilantes in the world. The fact that you are even alive after an encounter with them means they have no intention to kill you. At least not yet. Both of their quirks are completely unknown, but with the names they have given themselves, Devil and Angel, we have to assume their quirks have at least something to do with those names. Unfortunately, every time a case is open in a country to find and stop those two, they are already in another country. This has been happening for 2 years now. Tsukachi reveals to me, but I know that there is more devastating news to come. Their debut. It wasn't a pretty thing. Devil and Angel both teamed up to take out the number 3 villain of the world. Unfortunately, this villain's existence was a threat to all humanity, that these two literally appeared out of nowhere and slew that monstrous villain and almost died in the process. Unfortunately, they were labeled as vigilantes due to the fact that they killed the villain. You won't find any evidence of this villain because every trace that they were even alive was permanently wiped from existence after that fight. Hell, I don't even know what the villain looked like even though I was watching the whole fight alongside the world. It's just gone. It's as if someone took her existence and the memory of them from everyone's mind. But that's how things have been happening with them since. A worldwide game of cat and mouse, but I'm not so sure who is the cat or the mouse at this point. Tsukachi finished and leaned his back indicating he was done talking. That's a lot to take in. I simply say as that's all I can think of after hearing that bombshell. I don't think that we should report this to the Hero Commission. This could cause an uproar that we don't need right now. I say with 100% certainty that it will cause an uproar through the entire Hero and Safety Commissions. That I can agree on, Eraser. Let's just pretend that the killers ran away for now and hope that Devil and Angel will leave on their own. Tsukachi says as he gets up and helps me up as well, as we vote walk away swearing to not tell anyone that Devil and Angel are currently in Japan. Out of POV, back to the current, Eraser, you need to calm down. Only me and you know that this is the work of those two, so let's hold off on panicking for now, and report back to the Hero Commission. Tsukachi says in the most soothing voice he can so that he can get Aizawa out of his panic attack. After a couple of seconds of doing deep breathing exercises, Aizawa stands up and turns to Tsukachi. Alright, but for now let's find out this gang's name and their illegal activities. Aizawa says a little bit too calmly for Tsukachi's liking. Alright, but Aizawa, don't do anything stupid. Got it, your new class might be worth teaching. Tsukachi says as he knows that will get Aizawa out of whatever trance he is in. Only I can decide if they are worthy of the hero title. Aizawa glares at Tsukachi, who turns his head the other way and starts walking. Aizawa then sighs and follows Tsukachi to their car. Aizawa tilts his head up and can't help but make a promise to himself. Devil and Angel. I will find you and make you answer my question I've been wanting to ask for 7 years now. Aizawa clenches his fists as he thinks one last thing. This I will do. Izuku, can we go on patrol tonight? Toga pleadingly asks Izumi as she finishes up her section of cleaning the cafe. Alright. I'll get Dobby and we'll go on patrol. Izumi says as she finishes her section as well and looks over to Dobby who has finished cleaning the bar. Are you on for patrol, Dobby? Izumi calls over to Dobby. Sure, let me get ready first. Dobby grunts as he heads upstairs and is followed by Toga and Izumi shortly after. 10 minutes later, alright, let's get started, vampire and pyromancer. Izumi says in her Viridian persona, as they all jump away into the night. It's been pretty easy lately, don't you think? Izumi asks her comrades with a concerned face. Yeah, we haven't encountered any strong heroes or villains lately besides in the cafe. It's like the suspense is building up to something big. I don't like it. Dobby says with a distressed look on his face, well, as much as they can see in his eyes since he is wearing a mask currently. I agree with Pyro, it's got me on edge. Toga says with slight worry on her face. Well, looks like not much is W. Toga was interrupted by the sound of police sirens blaring down the streets of the bar district. Izumi turns to comrades and gives a slight smile. "Shall we?" she says as they all hop to the next rooftop and follow the noise of the police car. After about 5 minutes of rooftop jumping, they come to a stop as the police car comes to a stop at a barrier and the cops get out of the car. Man, I heard the horror scene beyond these barrier made a pro-hero pass out just because of pure madness and terror that was struck on those poor gang members. A man with a cat face came out of the car and began to work on the barrier. I heard that the people that found the scene vomited and were barely able to call the cops. A man with a bunch of eyes on his body came out of the car as well and went to do some crowd control. Well, looks like we need brace ourselves for whatever tragedy happened here. Toga says as she puts on her mask. "Let's go, guys." Dobby says as he hops to the next rooftop while the cops aren't paying attention. "Let's go, vampire." Izumi says as they both follow Dobby. Gore warning, "W to the H hell is this?" Toga says with a terrified tone and is visibly shaking with her face except turning a bit green. "I've been on the streets for a couple of years and not once have I ever witnessed anything remotely close to this." Dobby says as he turns to the opposite end of the rooftop and throws up. This is cruel and I've seen the dark side of society." Izumi says as she stumbles back and falls on her and tries to steady her breathing. What they were looking at was the definition of a bloody massacre. Bodies upon bodies lying on the concrete floor of the streets, covering several streets in pools of blood. W should leave B before heroes spot us. Izumi says as she wobbly stands up and takes off toward the cafe. We should join her and find out about this mess later. Toga says as she helps Dobby up and they both chase after Izumi. And 1 hour later we go to our current trio who is in their bedroom with the news channel on. And now on to worse news. Tonight all 150 members of the Foreman's gang was massacred last night. Let's go to head detective Namesa Tsukachi for an update on this unraveling situation. Onto you, Tsukachi. The newsman says as the screen switches to our favorite detective. This scene is a disaster. We haven't seen anything on his scale for about 7 years. The motives and the way they were killed is the same, and so is the fact in both scenarios they left no clue as to who they are. Sorry to say this, but the killer or killers are still at large and unknown. Tsukachi says with disappointment drawn on his face. The trio currently watching the news report can see that the detective is still hiding something. Thanks for the update, Tsukachi. If anyone has any idea as to who could have done this, please call the hero or the safety commission. Now on to brighter news dash. The TV turns off as Izumi's light up. You have any ideas on who the killers are? Toga asks because she is stumped on ego this could be. Yes, I do. From Tsukachi wording, he said killer or killers when usually he straight out says if it was a villain or a vigilante, but since he said killer that means he does have an idea on who it is and it's not someone that the public should know about. So all I have to do is look up a massacre like this about 7 years ago and I might find a clue. Izumi says as she gets one of the laptops and starts fast searching, mystery widespread massacre. After about 5 minutes of internet surfing, Izumi found a curious webpage of a theory of who it did the murder 7 years ago. When Izumi gets to the page, it turns out it was a bunch of crackheads just posting weird theories that involve a bunch of weird mythology stuff. Izumi was about to close the page down before. Hey Izu, what about this user? Toga points to a user that said that it might be a group or a pair of vigilantes who want to purge the rotten pumpkins. But that's not the most interesting part. What was that there was a link below the message and the user's handle. Taijutsu. That's a weird username, and why say vigilantes want to purge rotten pumpkins? Dobby says as he leans toward the screen as well and clicks on the link. The link takes a while to load, but when it loads it shows a love story between a devil and an angel, a forbidden pair. What is this? Toga curiously asks as this was not even on her radar of what she thought the link would lead to. Why does this story actually seem to give the impression on who the killers are? Dobby says with a half-concerned, half-thinking face. It's just giving me that impression for some reason. I was thinking the same thing. Dobby sighs. It's getting late and I think that this is the best lead we can get that isn't already removed from history. Izumi says as she puts her laptop away and crawls into her bed with Toga, while Dobby goes to the other room. Night Izu. Toga sleepy says. Good night you vampire. Izumi says as she falls asleep. Hey Izu, is that unsettling feeling still there for you? Toga calls out to Izumi while bussing a table. It hasn't bit, it's definitely lessened by a lot. Izumi calls out as she gets to taking someone's order. Hey, can you turn on the news? Calls out a random vigilante. Sure. Toga calls out as she grabs the remote and turns the channel to a news station. After a minute Izumi comes out of the kitchen with food and sets it down. I'm going on break. Izumi calls out as she grabs a smoothie she made and sits down at a table near the TV. Ring the cafe's entrance bell rang and a short boy with a red cap that had horns on the hat, brown short hair and plain clothes entered and had his head down and just walked over to Izumi's table and took a seat. Where have I seen this kid before? Izumi thinks as she gives the kid a sideways glance. News station noise, breaking news. A fight between the known and feared villain Muscular and the water hose duo. Let's go to the fight now. The newscaster said as the screen showed a losing battle. Muscular was pushing his way through the double water hose spray and was barely being held back. Izumi had her entire attention to the fight along with most of the cafe including Toga and Dobby. The cafe was almost silent besides silent chatter and the sound of tears dropping. Izumi turned her head toward the kid next to her and saw him crying while looking at the TV devastated. Izumi's eyes widen as she realizes where she saw the kid before. Kota Izumi. Son of the water hose duo. This kid. He isn't even near anyone he knows and he has to watch his parents die. Just like me. Izumi thought as she put her shoulder around Kota and pulled him to her. When Kota was right next to Izumi, he melted down and started crying really hard. As the fight continues, the water hose duo manage to send a big water burst at Muscular and sends him into a nearby building. Have the water hose duo done it? Have they defeated the Muscular terror? The news reporter shouts as the scene stays the same for a minute before the building Muscular was blasted into exploded and revealed Muscular standing tall but with his right eye closed shut with a pipe sticking out of its socket. Haha. You really think a puny attack like that can take me down? I'll crush you water hose duo. Muscular yells as he becomes a mountain of muscle as starts to charge and descend onto the duo. The water hose duo was using their quirk to the max to try to stop the mountain of mass fastly approaching them, but it wasn't enough. All they could do was just spray him with water as the mountain of mass starts to crush them. Damn it, we can't make it. The male of the water hose duo called out to his wife. I know honey. I just wish I could see Kota one more time. The female calls out as they are both being slowly crushed to death. This goes on for about a minute, but just before they are crushed they both say one last thing. We're sorry Kota. The sickening sound of bones snapping and skin being torn was heard before it became deadly silent. Hee hee. Ha. Muscular yells as he goes back to normal size. You stupid heroes think you can take me out? Well, you're wrong. Muscular continues to yell before fleeing when he hears other heroes coming. The cafe was almost silent besides the sounds of vigilante whispering stuff like, they were true heroes. 2. That BSTRD deserves punishment. After a couple moments of uncomfortable silence, Izumi gets up and picks up the exhausted Kota and walks to the stairs. Toga. Put Muscular's name on the list of banned people. I'm going to put the kid in. Izumi says as she ascends the stairs with Kota in her arms, still crying in his sleep. Yes ma'am. Toga salutes before taking out a permeate marker and adds Muscular to the list of the banned. Alright everyone, I think I should warn you guys of something. Toga calls out to the cafe and gets most of the attention. There is a slight chance Muscular might try to take refuge here, so those who don't want to be seen here by the bigger named heroes go ahead and leave. Toga calls out and a couple of the vigilantes and a few villains leave the cafe without saying a word, leaving about 10 customers left. Alright, now for the rest of you. Dobby says as attention turns toward him. If anyone from the banned list ever comes here, they are told to leave and not come back, but if they refuse to leave and or threaten to destroy the place if they can't stay, we the staff and you the customers are allowed to use minimal quirk usage to remove the threat. Thanks for your time. Dobby bows before returning to work. A quiet murmur is heard, but otherwise the cafe went back to normal. After about 5 minutes, Izumi comes down the stairs and walks over to Dobby and Toga. "Hey guys," Izumi says in a hushed tone, and receives nods from both Toga and Dobby. "I found that the kid was the child of the water hose duo." That made Toga's and Dobby's eyes widen but didn't say anything. Until that maniac Muscular is properly dealt with, I'm not going to tell the heroes about Kota. When Muscular is dealt with, I'll call the wild PP cats and tell them about Kota. I'll with things from there," Izumi says as she gets back up, not waiting for a response, and gets back to work. As Izumi moves to a table, she whispers to a vigilante. "When I give the word, please move Muscular outside." That whisper gets a nod from a plainly dressed vigilante with plastic gloves on. Just a random person with useful quirk, not Shigaraki. 10 minutes later, Izumi's ears perk up as she hears a commotion outside. "Dobby, Toga," Izumi says as she and the others prepare for the raging villain to enter. Ring slam, the door hits the wall hard as Muscular enters the cafe. "I'm safe since this is a gray zone," a bloody Muscular mutters as he looks up and sees a pissed look on a lot of the people in the cafe. "Muscular," Izumi says with a very cold tone, freezing Muscular in place out of a weird, unknown fear of this broccoli head. "You are banned from this cafe for life. Leave or we will remove you with force," Izumi says in an even more chilling voice. It seemed to sound somewhat demonic. "Never this a gray zone, so I'm safe, so shut up, child." Muscular growls at the broccoli head, thinking she is bluffing about removing him with force. "Your funeral, I guess. Mr. R and Dobby, if you will," Izumi says as she ducks behind the counter along with others going under their tables. The vigilante the Izumi talked to earlier raised his hand and Muscular got sent out of the cafe with Dobby chasing right after him. As Muscular lands outside, he looks up to see Dobby standing in front of him with blue flames covering his fist, and his eyes seem to glow a weird blue. "Take this piece of SHT cremation fist." Dobby punches Muscular in the chest and sends him flying, covered in blue flames, screaming in pure agony. He then crashes into a building nearby and instantly goes unconscious with a bunch of burns on his body with no trace of the blue flames ever being there. "Trash like you doesn't deserve to be in a place like our cafe," Dobby says as he heads back to the cafe and gets back to business as usual along with the others. After about a minute has passed, a bunch of police sirens are heard outside with people running around and lots of yelling. Izumi comes down the stairs with a stack of papers and sets them down on a table that is facing the door and is in front of all the customers and workers. "Attention everyone. This is going to be a long night, so dinner will be free. Try to just be in the background and don't do anything to upset the cops or heroes while they apprehend Muscular." Izumi then bows and sits down, getting her papers organized for when the cops and heroes do enter and try to screw over the cafe. As long as the flaming trash doesn't come in, everything will go as Izuku plans. Dobby says to himself loud enough so others will hear and relax. After what seemed to be hours, a bunch of cops and heroes entered the cafe and broke the door off the hinges, sending it into a couple of unoccupied tables and chairs, and breaking them in the process. A man with a dog face for a head entered the building and he roughed. "I am the head police of Mustafa. Rough, this cafe is currently holding vigilantes and villains in here. Rough, everyone please get up so we can take you into custody." "Rough," the police captain barks out. As the police try to take a step forward, Izumi coughs. "Ahem, sorry to burst, gentlemen, but you can't arrest anyone here," Izumi says as she grabs a couple of papers. "What is a green-headed scared girl like you going to do, child?" One of the many heroes cockily says as he comes toward Izumi. "I would stop where you are, Yellow Flash," Izumi says in her demonic voice, causing the hero to stop in his place and start to sweat. For one, this is a gray zone, so everyone here is currently a civilian, including you fellows. And two, I own the place, Izumi says as she pulls out 2 stacks of stapled papers that have rights for both the place and the permit for the cafe. "You can keep those, I have the originals," Izumi says as she passes the papers to the dog officer. The head police officer takes the papers and reads them thoroughly. After about a minute of reading, the dog man puts down the papers. "Well, Miss Izumi, I couldn't think of anything better for her new last name without giving up her original name. All of the paperwork is official, rough, but I don't see anything that indicates this as a gray zone. Rough. If you dummies would kindly look at the front door you broke off the hinges, you can see that it says it's a gray zone and all the rules for this gray zone. Izumi immediately replies, waving her hand at the broken door that is sitting on top of some other broken furniture. After the cops and heroes look at the broken door, their faces pale and some start to nervously step back when they see the wicked smile Izumi is giving them. Now that you stupid heroes and cops see that y'all are in the wrong, let's talk about the property damage that you morons caused. Izumi's eyes start to glow as her creepy smile and voice truly give her a demonic vibe. And that was the moment they realized. They F up big time. This girl. The dog officer thinks as he looks over the green-headed scarred girl, no more like a demon, in front of him. She is truly a dangerous threat, but we know nothing of her and the fact that she has us wrapped around her finger right now. We picked the wrong enemy to face. Gulps. Well then what are you going to do, Miss Midder Ruff? Let's see. Attempted wrongful arrests of an entire cafe full of people, property damage consisting of a broken front door, 2 tables and half a dozen chairs, all of which was made out of expensive wood. I would say you guys own this cafe for 150,000 yen. The dog officer and all other officers and heroes paled at the amount of yen they ended up having to pay a girl with bandages covering almost half her face. Well, it just so happens that the empty street block behind this cafe is up for sale and the cost to buy the entire area of this empty block is almost 150,000 yen. And it just so happens that I have the papers for said street block right here. So will you sign the papers or will I sue? Choose wisely. Izumi says while her eye is glowing a very disturbing green and her grin turns into a sinister smirk. A few officers and heroes immediately bolted out of the cafe due to them peeing themselves because of the huge amount of demonic energy she was giving off. Even a few of the villains and vigilantes in the cafe shy away because of this intense demonic pressure. Even Toga and Dobby gulp because they have never witnessed this side of Izumi before. The dog officer and a few other cops and heroes who managed to stand their ground looked at the demonic girl in front of them and looked at each other, not sure of what to do, but in the end it was the head officer who made the decision. Alright Ruff, I'll sign this so don't sue. The dog officer signs all of the necessary areas and set the papers down. If I may ask before we leave, Ruff, what are planning on doing with this property? Ruff, what I'm planning on doing with it is none of your business since you have been asking me as an officer to worker in a gray zone instead of a civilian to worker. So please leave and never use your officer title in this cafe ever again. All the officers and heroes leave, but as the head officer was about to leave, Izumi says, "Send at least one of the wild pussycats here. We have a child here that is related to them that entered here before the muscular fight was broadcasted." Izumi gives him a side glance as he nods and leaves. After about 10 minutes, all the sirens leave earshot and the trio of Izumi, Toga and Dobby all collapse cause of the strain of remaining in serious vigilante mode for too long took a toll on them. After a couple of seconds passed, Izumi stands up again and takes a deep breath in. Thank you all for remaining calm while the heroes and cops apprehended muscular. You are all free to leave without getting caught now. Izumi bows as all the customers leave without saying a lot besides the occasional muttered, "Thanks for the meal." Once everyone had left, Izumi walks over to Toga and Dobby, who were both behind the bar counter. Don't relax just yet. We still have to deal with the Pussycats when they arrived and having to fix our door. Izumi sighs as she looks at the broken door on the floor on top of broken tables and chairs. Great, more work after a stressful interaction. Dobby sarcastically says he goes to the broken stuff and takes it outside. We definitely need to do some vigilante work tomorrow to release this stress. Toga says as she takes out a BLD pack from thin air and starts to drink it. I definitely agree. Izumi agrees as she goes upstairs and revives the sleeping Kota and puts him on the booth closest to the stairs. Right now we wait. Just great. Izumi deadpants as she goes to the opposite side of the booth and lays down, with Toga hopping over and laying down with her. When Dobby finishes, he sees this and decides to go upstairs and sleep since he figured Izumi can figure out the stuff with the kid and the Pussycats. At the Wild Pussycats headquarters. Hey Mandalay, have you found Kota yet? Pixie Bop asked in her childish tone. Mandalay sighs before turning around. No, I've been searching for him with my quirk for an hour now, but I can't find him. Just imagine what will happen when he finds out about his parents being killed. Mandalay says as she puts her hands over her ears and uses her quirk once again only to be able to hear the other pussycats' thoughts. I sure hope that Kota doesn't shut everyone out after he hears the news. Ragdoll says while she is cooking some food for everyone. Kota has to be strong for his parents. Tiger says as he leans against the wall in the middle of everyone. One day either he or someone else will show him that dying for something you believe in isn't that bad. Tiger says, receiving nods from the other pussycats. Everyone meows, dinner is done. Ragdoll shouts out as she puts a bunch of cat-faced shaped foods on the dinner table. Come and eat the catnip. She snickers to herself as everyone else rolls their eyes. Tiger looks at the food and his stomach grumbles. As bad as the jokes are, I'm hungry, so let's eat dash, asterisk meow meow. Meow meow. Meow meow. Asterisk the headquarters phone starts ringing as Mandalay gives a quick glare at Ragdoll, who just gives a SHT eating grin back at Mandalay as she picks up the phone. Hello, this is the Wild Pussycats. This is Mandalay speaking. Hello Mandalay. A feminine voice stays over the phone. I believe we have one Kota Izumi here. This causes Mandalay to almost drop the phone and grab the attention of the other pussycats. Before Mandalay could speak up, the voice spoke again. No need to worry, hero. Kota walked into my cafe before the fight with Muscular happened and he is now asleep in one of the bedrooms in our upstairs. So please come and pick him up. Location is at Thank you and goodbye. The call stopped just as Mandalay was about to say something. Mandalay looks at the phone for a few seconds before putting it back down. Hey Mandalay, what was that call about? Pixie Bop asks as she takes a bit out of a big piece of meat. Someone found Kota and I'll have to go pick him up. Mandalay says as she puts on her jacket. That's fantastic. Want one of us to come with? Tiger asks as he shoves some meat into his face. Yeah, Pixie Bop, can you come with me? Mandalay asks as she finishes getting ready to leave. Sure. Pixie Bop responds as she hopped up from her chair with a thick piece of meat in her mouth. I just hope that Kota will be safe until we reach him. Mandalay sighs as she and Pixie Bop get into one of their civilian cars and drive to the cafe. Please give me suggestions for the new cafe name. At the cafe, hey Izu, are you sure that you don't need me down here for when the Pussycats come and pick up the kid? Toga asks as looks to the side and sees Izumi stroking a sleeping Kota's head on one of the couches. Yes, I'm sure I can handle Mandalay and whoever she brings with her here. Izumi says as her eyes don't leave Kota. Okay Izu. Good night. Toga says as she climbs the stairs. Good night Toga. Izumi looks over to Toga and gives her a soft smile, as Toga disappears up the stairs. Izumi lets out a sigh as she looks over Kota and takes some mental notes on his physical form. He looks like he hasn't eaten since yesterday. I'll go make some food. Izumi decides as she gently sets Kota's head down on the couch and moves to the kitchen. Kota just lays there for a couple of minutes before he starts to move and lets out a groan as he slowly sits up and opens his eyes. Ugh. Where am I? Kota looks around and sees a somewhat familiar cafe. Oh yeah, I went here after escaping from the house and I watched my parents die. Kota starts to have tears going down his face and it slowly evolves into a sob as he remembers the scene of his parents slowly dying under the villain Muscular. And for whatever reason, that familiar warmth of someone holding him when he saw their deaths. Izumi then comes out from the kitchen with 2 plates of food. Oh, I see you're awake. Izumi comments as she puts the food on a table near the couch and takes a seat next to it. If you want to eat before the Pussycats get here, you better eat now, kid. Izumi looks over at Kota before she starts to eat from her plate. Kota flinches a bit when he sees that half of Izumi's face is covered with green cloth bandages and only has one eye showing. What happened to your eye, miss? Kota bluntly asks, causing Izumi to cholesterol on her food for a second before recovering. Geez kid, you wake up in a cafe with no one recognizable around and a stranger with half of her face covered with cloth bandages tells you to eat and the first thing you ask is what happened to my face. Izumi asks with a what the F face. Kota just simply nods in response. Well, if you must know, this happened after a long series of events that led from common bullying to Quirk abuse by my former friend to watching a similar thing happen to me that happened to your parents. Izumi coldly says as she continues to eat her food. Kota takes a few seconds to process that before he asks another question. Did your parents die to villains as well? Kota asked and immediately wished he didn't ask. Izumi gripped her plate so hard that her plate shattered into hundreds of pieces and took a few seconds to calm down before looking at Kota again. My mom was killed by a hero. Kota's eyes widened as Izumi's anger grew as well. Then the same hero blamed it on the villain he was chasing. And I don't even know where my dad is. He left my mom shortly after I was born. Izumi clenches her fists and looks down for a couple of seconds before Kota speaks up again. So you're somewhat like me then? Kotz asks, curious about who this person is now. Izumi stops clenching her hands as she relaxes again and softly chuckles. I guess you could say that. Kota looks at Izumi with some admiration. She went from, I'm going to kill you all for killing my mom, to laughing for the sake of distracting herself and others around her in an instant. Hey, what's your name? My name's Kota Izumi. Izumi freezes for a second before responding. You can call me Izu for now. Izumi decides as she cleans up the mess she made. While Izumi is cleaning the glass she broke, Kota looks over to the food that was made for him and his stomach growls. Embarrassed, Kota walks to the table and climbs the chair and starts to eat. Hey Kota, how the FO dash? Izumi starts to ask but stops when she sees tears rushing down Kota's face as he starts to eat the food really fast. Geez kid, is that good or bad that you're crying over it? Izumi asks as she starts to question if her food is that bad. And no it's just it tastes just like my parents see cooking. Kota's tearfully says as he finishes the food in 30 seconds. Thank you Izu. Kota jumps off from the chair and runs toward Izumi and gives her a flying hug. Izumi was knocked off her feet by the sudden hug, as she fell on her but with Kota hugging her waist as he held on tight. Izumi looks down at Kota for a second before she puts one of her arms around Kota and the other on the ground behind her to prevent her from lying on the ground. They stay like that for a couple of minutes before Kota shifts around and quietly says, Do I have to go back? Kota asks as he looks up and sees a conflicted face on Izumi. Listen kid. If you want to stay here for the purpose of staying with people you want to stay with, then sure. But if you just want to stay here cause I remind you of your parents, then no. Izumi says and sees Kota looking at her with a confused face. Listen Kota. I'm not going to tell you that your parents dying was a good thing like others might say. Instead I'll tell you that this world is unfair. If you have a weak, useless, or quirkless you will not last long in this world on your innocence. Those people will be bullied. There's no getting around it. Some might get a bruise occasionally or others like myself will either die from injuries or have a lifelong injury. Izumi says as she puts her hand over the left side of her face, causing Kota to flinch and look at Izumi with a new perspective. Then there are those with strong or useful quirks. They are treated like kings and are told when they get their quirks that they are always right and the weaker quirk people are nothing like ants or are to be treated like animals. Kota looks at Izumi in shock and wonders how in the world she is saying this all with a straight face. Out of all of these people they always branch off into two sides. The side that rejects the quirk discriminatory society and fights to fix it, or the side that believes everything that people tell them and always gain a superiority complex or in more extreme cases a god complex. Those people don't care about others. They don't pay attention to how many lives are taken and how much more collateral damage they do just by fighting each other or villains. Izumi pauses for a second and hears a click in her mind which Izumi knows is Mandalay's quirk. Izumi smiles as she continues her speech. Your parents were on the good side of the spectrum of heroes. But with being a true good hero, death always gets them faster than fake heroes or villains. Kota, good people die all the time for no good reason. Just know this, no matter if your parents wanted to die today or not, They wouldn't want to ever abandon you. Unfortunately, everyone has to die eventually, whether they want to or not. Until that time happens, it's your decision on what you want to do, Kota. Izumi says as she puts her fist over Kota's heart. Your life. Your choices. Izumi says as she walks over to the front door and opens it, revealing Mandalay and Pixie Bop standing on the other side. Both of their eyes widen at somehow being discovered so easily by Izumi. Come on in, Mandalay and Pixie Bop. Izumi says as she opens the door all the way and walks over toward Kota again. Do you really want to go in? It could be a trap. Pixie Bop nervously says as she takes another look at Izumi, who is sitting at a table near the back with Kota. Yes, we will. Even if she might be dangerous, she called us and told us where Kota was, so that gives her some credit. Mandalay says as she enters the cafe with Pixie Bop shortly behind her. Please take a seat if you wish to talk for a bit. Izumi says as grabs a cup of green tea from her table and takes a drink. Mandalay and Pixie Bop look at one another before going over to the table where Izumi was sitting. If you don't mind me asking, can you answer a question? Mandalay asks Izumi, who nods as she drinks more of her tea. Are you the owner, and if so, how old are you? Mandalay asks while she activates her quirk again, to peek into Izumi's thoughts. Izumi simply smiles and responds. I am 15 years old, and yes, I am the owner of this cafe. Izumi says as she looks Mandalay in the eyes. Mandalay tries to use her quirk, but her eyes widen when she finds Izumi's mind is empty. Mandalay takes a few seconds to straighten herself out before she asks another question, but as she was about to ask her second question, Kota spoke up. I want to stay here. I don't want to go back there since my parents are dead, so I'll stay here with Izu. Kota says as he looks up and points at Izumi as she looks at Kota with a shocked expression. Even after I told you that staying here with us wouldn't be the best idea, you still want to stay here. I don't understand you, kid. Izumi thinks to herself as Mandalay gives Izumi a curious look as she hears Izumi's thoughts as well. Mandalay and Pixie Bop look at each other for a few seconds and speak through Mandalay's quirk before they both nod and look back at Izumi. It is possible for you to take care of Kota since he is underage and needs a guardian, but we will have to continue asking you some questions. Pixie Bop says as she looks at Izumi, who is still looking at Kota. Izumi takes a few seconds to compose herself before looking back at the two Pussycats in front of her. All right, I'll answer your questions. Izumi says as she puts on her poker face. Okay, the second question is mine. Pixie Bop says as she does one of her poses before sitting back down. Why did you make this cafe a gray zone? Pixie Bop asks as she pays careful attention to Izumi's facial expressions while Mandalay uses her quirk to peek into Izumi's mind. Izumi stares at them both for a couple of seconds before taking a deep breath and looking them both in the eyes. As well as someone who can do it with one eye. That's simple. I wanted to open a cafe to everyone. Izumi responds as she softly smiles. Okay, third question. How many employees do you have, and do they have any criminal records? Mandalay asks as she looks a bit concerned at Izumi. Izumi again looks at them both for a few seconds before responding. I have 2 employees and neither of them have any criminal records. I did a background check on them on my own time. Izumi says as looks at the stairs and sees a flicker of movement before turning back to the Pussycats. Mandalay continues to stare at Izumi, who is still keeping her poker face on. Fine then, last question. Actually, I need to ask you a question first, Mandalay and Pixie Bop. Izumi interrupts and gives them both a dark glare. You both know that this is a gray zone, so are you asking these questions as heroes or someone who is concerned for their cousin? Izumi asks as she gives both Mandalay and Pixie Bop a death stare that makes them both flinch. Mandalay takes a few moments of looking at Izumi, before glaring back and responding. I'm concerned about Kota both as a hero and a civilian cause he wants to stay with someone who is basically a ghost to the hero commission. Mandalay snaps back this time, causing Izumi to flinch a bit. So they consider those who appear out of nowhere and aren't villains, ghosts, huh? Izumi thinks to herself before looking at both of the Pussycats with her neutral poker face on. Please continue what you were asking. Izumi says as she goes back to sipping her tea. Mandalay and Pixie Bop give Izumi a weird look and they both think, First she is normal, then 1 second she's all, I'll slit your throats, and now she's back to normal. This girl is really weird. Mandalay looks at Izumi one last time before asking her a question. Our last question. What is your intent to do with Kota? Mandalay simply asks. If you're asking if I'll turn Kota into a villain or vigilante, the answer is no. If he wants to stay here, then I might as well teach him how to interact with my customers, since not all of them are cold-blooded killers like most heroes see them as. Izumi immediately responded, knowing that was going to be the last question. Mandalay and Pixie Bop look at each other one final time before they both sighed and were about to say something before Izumi pulled a paper from out of nowhere and put it on the table. Something about signing for being Kota's legal guardian and you wanting to visit him. It's all on this paper. Izumi says as she slides it to Mandalay. Mandalay and Pixie Bop both looked down at the paper before grabbing it and started reading. After about 5 minutes of reading all of the official stuff and the stuff Izumi added in, specifically about the gray zone thing, they both sign the paper because they know that the Pussycats can't raise him properly with the amount of hero work they do. Okay, we have signed it. Mandalay says as she looks at Izumi, who has her cup on the table and is putting a sleeping Kota on the couch. Alright then, now if you want to add anything extra to these papers, please do so and I'll look over them afterward. Izumi says as she puts her arms on the table and rests her head on her arms. After a minute of writing stuff down, Mandalay slid the paper back to Izumi, who took it and read the condition she wrote. Once a week the rescue hero squad known as the Wild Pussycats can come to cafe after hours to hang out with Kota, Izumi, and the owner, Izumi. Izumi looks up at the two pussycats in front of her for a few seconds before activating her quirk and continuing. Saturdays work best for me if you want to come to hang out, Izumi says as she signs the paper as well and stands up. If you could please leave, it has been a stressful and tiring day, so I would really like to fall asleep. Izumi says as rubs her eye and goes to pick up Kota. Just please don't try to disturb the business. We the staff will kick out anyone who gets on our banned list. Izumi says as she picks up Kota and walks toward the stairs. Will you treat Kota the same way society treated you? Pixie Bop asks, causing Izumi to stop walking and look at the ground. Mandalay and Pixie Bop both stand up and look at Izumi with a concerned expression. I don't know what you know about me, but let me say this. I will never let Kota be a victim to this quirkiest society. Izumi coldly says as she gets to the base of the stairs, before stopping again. Come on by for some drinks or food sometime. And please lock the door as you leave. Izumi then ascends the stairs and disappears from the Pussycat's sight. I think that we can trust Kota in the hands of that girl. Mandalay says as she and Pixie Bop walk out of the cafe and toward their car. I agree. I sense that that girl has seen the dark side of society all of her life and that she wants to protect others from experiencing it too. Pixie Bop says as she and Mandalay both go to their car and drive off. Back upstairs, Izumi walks to one of the unoccupied rooms and sets Kota down in there, and puts him to sleep while covering him with some blankets. When Izumi steps out of the room and into the main bedroom, she is met with the concerned faces of Toga and Dobby. After a couple of seconds of them just staring at her, Izumi breaks the silence. I know you both were listening in on the conversation, so just ask your questions. Izumi says with her poker face on. Toga and Dobby both look down for a second before Toga speaks up. What did you mean about background checks and lying about having criminal records? Toga asks with a betrayed look on her face. I meant what I said. I know pretty much everything about your backgrounds, and both of you don't have any recorded kills on your real identities. Izumi says while moving to the opposite bed that they were sitting on. I think it's about time you tell us what you know about Toga and I and what your story is. Dobby says while he ignites his hand and points it toward Izumi, with the or else implied. Izumi sighs before looking at them both with a serious expression. I perfectly know about your true identities and what your pasts are. First off with Toga. Real name is Himiko Toga. Born to two neglectful parents who turned outright abusive when they learned of the downside of your quirk, transform. Years and years of quirk neglect led to your quirk going on a rampage for BLD, leading to you attacking your parents and draining them of all BLD, killing them in the process. You lived on the streets for about a month, cutting, slashing, and draining people for their BLD, before you eventually wandered into my cafe and I took you and here you are. Izumi summed up and looked at Toga, who looked at her with shock. Before Izumi turned to Dobby, who flinched hard. Now for Dobby. Because of the complicated situation due to your family, I'll only explain the necessary parts. Your mother was forced onto a Quirk marriage even though it's been illegal for years. Your father used your mother to create the ultimate child. A kid with a half and half quirk. You were the first child and you were given one of the most powerful fire quirks. Unfortunately, due to the self-destructive part of your quirk, your father tried for more children. 3 children later, he finally got a child with a half and half quirk. Due to you still wanting the attention of your father and not wanting your younger sibling to suffer, you started to push your quirk limits a lot until finally your quirk malfunctioned, and you burned down the part of the house you were in and it collapsed in on itself. They never found your body, so your father finally declared you dead, and the rest of your family was forced to believe that you were dead. As Izumi pauses to take a breath, Dobby can't help but look at the girl in front of him and look at her in a new, fearful way. If Izu is capable of pulling that much information on me, what else is she capable of? You go on to live your life as a dead man and you just go on with life, making a new name for yourself and burning people alive that you don't agree with or that just pissed you off. And well, we all know the rest of that story. Izumi finishes up as she takes a deep breath and clenches her hands so hard that she ends up bleeding. Izu. Was your past as bad as ours or worse? Toga worryingly says as she gets up and grabs some bandages and wraps up Izumi's hands as she calms her breathing. Yes, my past was that bad. But let me start with my real name. My name is Izumi Midoriya. Unlike Toga, who faced how people were treated with villainous quirks, I faced the side that treated people with weak or useless quirks. For years I was treated like dirt and trash, and my childhood best friend got a really powerful quirk and ended up as my main tormentor for all of those years. Izumi then starts to unwrap her face bandages as she continues. Until one day a series of events changed my life forever. My ex-best friend waited at the front gates of the school like he usually does to give me a daily beating until he started to take it way too far, and I tried to stop him, but he got pissed off and charged one of his most powerful attacks and launched his hand onto my face and let loose a devastating explosion that launched me across the schoolyard and out the school gates. Izumi says as she fully unwraps her face and reveals the burn to Dobby and Toga again, who look at the burn again and see a hand shape on the more burnt part of her face and the fact that it does look like an explosion happened right on her face. After a couple seconds of them staring at her hideous scar, Izumi wraps it up again. Back to my story. After being blown out of the school, I decided to walk home. When I got close to my neighborhood, I saw a large amount of smoke coming from the direction of my house, and I saw Endeavor standing there with his foot on top of a badly beaten and unconscious villain, in front of my house that was burning down. With my mother in it. Izumi clenches her hand again, while Toga's and Dobby's eyes widen as they can tell the fate of Izumi's mother. Endeavor said something about pinning the blame of the fire that he caused on the villain, before walking away. I tried searching for my mother for about 10 minutes, but the house was too hot and I knew that my mother was dead because of something I found that she never leaves the house with, this green hair clip. Izumi pulls out a green hair clip that is the same shade of green as her hair. She looks down and stares at it as she continues to speak. I just wandered around town with my head hanging low until it was evening, and I finally looked up and I saw this place, and the rest is history. Izumi says as she looks up with tears rolling down her face. I don't want either of you guys to die on me. Please don't die. Debo and Toga both hop off their bed they were sitting on and rush at Izumi and hug her tightly. Both of them start to tear up and start softly crying as well. Don't worry, Izu, we will always be there for you. We aren't going to die on you, so don't worry. Toga sniffles out as she squeezes Izumi tighter. I'm sorry he did that to your mother, but we ain't dying to a fire caused by that flaming trash. We will be your family from now on, so don't worry. Dobby quietly says as he and Toga softly hug Izumi. Thank why you guys. IW won't ever forget this. I will always be your family as well. Izumi says as she continues to cry and hugs them both back. Kota was confused. He had woken up in a semi-familiar place with no one else in the room. It took him a second to realize that the event of yesterday really did happen, that he was now in the custody of the one-eyed green-hair girl who reminded Kota of his mother, since she seemed to give off a motherly vibe to Kota. That girl, her name was Izu if Kota remembered correctly. Izu really did seem to mean what she said about his parents. She didn't even say his parents died heroes, she had told him that his parents' death wasn't one that they deserved. That reminded him of something. It was awesome to watch Muscular get one shot by that guy with blue flames. Was he a worker at this cafe? He did have the same style of uniform as Izu did. Just as he started to dig deeper into his thoughts, he heard a knock on the door and a voice call out. "Kota, I'm coming in and I made you some breakfast." The voice said before opening the door, and the person who stepped inside the room was Izu. "How are you doing, Kota?" Izu asks kindly as she swiftly puts down the tray of food and sits at the end of the bed Kota was sitting on. "I'm doing fine," Kota hesitantly says as he slowly reaches for the food and stares at it once it's in his hands. "You should eat, Kota. You are under my care now, so I want to be healthy for when your aunts come to visit," Izu says as she points a finger gun at Kota, who looks up at Izu. "You don't have to come downstairs if you don't want to. Some of the customers can be scary at times. If you choose to stay up here, I'll make sure to come up here or send one of my friends/employees once an hour to check up on you. I have some books and cards in the closet over there if you want to use those," Izu says as she moves her finger gun to said closet while still keeping her eyes locked on Kota. "But why did you take me in? Why should I even trust you?" Kota asks in a quiet voice, not wanting to meet Izu's gaze. "That's simple. You're just a kid who wants help, but you can't trust heroes since they think your parents' death was just a hero's death, saying stuff like they died as heroes excuse," Izu sarcastically says as she uses air quotes around "they died as heroes," before turning her face back to one of kindness. "Well, I'm not a hero, so I hope that you will trust me. And you're welcome to come downstairs anytime you like," Izu says as she opens the door and disappears downstairs, leaving Kota to his thoughts. She seems nice enough. But if she's not a hero, then what is she? She saved me from that maniac villain who killed my family and took me in without a second thought. That sounds like a hero to me, but she said she wasn't. I'll have to ask her later what she means. Kota wonders to himself as he starts to eat Izu's food and almost immediately bursts into tears because the food reminded Kota of his mother's cooking. Kota then started scarfing his down and finished eating his food in a minute with years estarring down his face. When Kota finished his food, he wiped his eyes and hopped out of bed and walked toward the closet that Izumi had pointed out. Kota had to stand on his tippy toes to reach the door handle and open the closet. The one was mostly empty except for a few boxes and miscellaneous junk. But one box caught Kota's eye especially. It was a small box with the label on the side reading, "Past Analysis Books, contains dangerous info." Of course, immediately after Kota read the title, he grabbed the box and opened it up. Inside he saw thin books. The kind of books that one would use for a diary or a journal. The books were numbered from 1 to 13, and as the number grew, the neater the handwriting each book cover had. Kota then grabbed book 1 and headed downstairs to where Izumi was working with Toga and Dobby. The further downstairs he went, the louder the chatter was, and when he finally made it all the way down, he took a second to take in the scene and atmosphere. There were about 20 people inside the cafe. 4 of which are Kota, Izumi, Toga, and Dobby. The others were people Kota felt like he should know but couldn't put his finger on it. There was a booth in one of the back tables that was filled with half a dozen people who all seemed to know each other. The only common thing that Kota could tell about that group was their red shoes. Everyone else seemed to be normal beside the various equipment and their weird clothes. There was a person who was in a booth near the door who was wrapped in what seemed to be a yellow sleeping bag, laying in the booth with their head buried in the booth, so Kota couldn't tell who the person was. "Hey Kota, good to see that you're doing well." A blonde-haired girl with her hair pulled into buns and was wearing a tan version of the uniform that Izu was wearing, who Kota heard Izu call Toga, called out as she approached the small boy. "I'm doing fine. Izu said that I could come down whenever I wanted to," Kota hesitantly says as he looks at Toga with a wary look in his eyes. "Well, we don't have much for you to do right now, so you can sit wherever you want and we will check up on you." If you want to have something to eat or drink, just let us know, okay? Toga says in a soft voice and pats Kota's head once and turns around to get back to work. Kota stared at Toga as she went to go help the group of people with the red shoes. After she started a conversation with them, Kota decided to go to the booth that the person wrapped in a yellow sleeping bag was sleeping in and sat down across from them while opening the analysis book he brought downstairs and started reading it. Reminder, the analysis book started when Izuku/Izumi were around Kota's and Eris age. The rabbit hero, Mirko, a new hero who debuted a week ago. Her quirk appears to be a rabbit mutation quirk. She has long white rabbit ears sticking out of her longish white hair. Her legs and feet are rabbit's legs and feet. They appear to be really strong and durable if her debut fight against the villain with a rock-hardening skin quirk has anything to say about it. It is possible for her to slam her legs onto the ground and make a mini earthquake as a result. It is theoretically possible for her kicks to match All Might's punches one day if she can develop the right technique. The symbol of peace, All Might's quirk is unknown to the public. Many people think it's a major strength enhancement quirk. Some think it's a quirk similar to the international Playboy hero, Captain Celebrity, who has a quirk called Flight, but he has enough strength to lift a cargo ship in the air as it was sinking. I think it's a quirk that provides the user abnormal strength according to the situation. In some of his fights he has used a move that creates large amounts of wind pressure and can even change the weather depending on the situation. The reason All Might is the symbol of peace is because of his presence and that ever-shining smile. In his years as the symbol of peace and the #1 hero in Japan, he has decreased crime from 30% to almost 5%. Hero analysis, huh? Is that your book, kid? The human caterpillar person asked, causing Kota to jump a bit, before lowering his gaze from the book to the caterpillar person who was facing Kota, revealing his face. He looked like a hobo. And no, it's Izu's analysis book from when she was around my age. Kota nervously responds to the hobo caterpillar. The green-haired, one-eyed girl over there. The hobo says as uses the end of his sleeping bag and points it at Izu as she chats with the scarred man behind the counter, who Kota heard Izu call Dobby. Yes, she wrote this book. It has some interesting entries on different heroes. Kota explains as he shows the hobo caterpillar the entries on Mirko. After a couple of seconds reading the journal, the hobo caterpillar lifted his head and stared at Kota for a few seconds before finally saying something. How long ago did you say the green-haired girl wrote this book? The hobo caterpillar pillar asked as he glanced at Izu while she was making some coffee for a customer while having a conversation with Dobby. Around my age. I don't know how old Izu is right now though. Kota says as he drifts his gaze toward Izu and ponders on the hobo caterpillar's question. And just how many of these analysis journals did the green-haired girl make? The hobo caterpillar asks with curiosity as he once again glances at Izu, who looks back at him and smirks. I think I saw around 10 journals upstairs from the box I found this journal in. Kota answers with honesty as he shifts his gaze from Izu back to the hobo caterpillar. Why are you curious about Izu's analysis books? Kota asks as he turns his head, not aware of one-eyed figure standing at the edge of his table. Yeah, why are you interested in my analysis books, Eraser? Izu suddenly spoke up, causing Kota and the hobo caterpillar to flinch back at the sudden arrival of Izu, who was holding a cup of what looked like coffee. Are you perhaps interested in buying some analysis on someone or something? Izu asks innocently as she sets down the hobo caterpillar's coffee and slides the cup to him. You sell analysis. The hobo asks in surprise as he shifts his body around and sits up. Once he sat up, he seemed to unzip his sleeping bag and it fell halfway down, revealing the hobo caterpillar to be a homeless-looking guy with messy straight black hair and wearing a black jumpsuit showing off his skinny body. Yes, I do. I do any kind of analysis. Ranging from heroes to villains to corrupt management. And of course I charge money for it, but the price depends on how sensitive the info they want is. Izu explains as she tentatively watches how the hobo reacted to her explanation. Interesting. The hobo mutters as he takes a drink of his coffee and lets out a long sigh before setting the cup back on the table. How much would it cost to have a complete analysis on me? Izu looked at the hobo for a few seconds before smiling and giving a response. Since it is just on yourself and you're an underground hero, I'll charge you 65.55 yen, about $50 in American currency, for a complete analysis. Izuku sums up as she slides into the booth right next to Kota. The hobo seemed to contemplate what Izuku just said for a few seconds before taking another shot of his coffee and setting it back down. Deal. I'll have the money next week when I come for my weekly coffee. The hobo said as he finished off his coffee and stood up from the booth and rolled up his sleeping bag. It's a pleasure doing business with you, Eraser, Izuku said as she also got up from the booth and held out her hand to the hobo, who looked at her for a few seconds before hesitantly shaking her hand. I hope that it will be as good as you make it out to be. The hobo said the last part while leaning toward Izuku, who smirked after hearing whatever the hobo had said. As the hobo was opening the door to leave the cafe, Izuku spoke up. Oh, but I have no idea who you are talking about, Eraser, Izuku said as she gave the hobo one more sly smile before getting back to work. The hobo stared at her a few seconds before exiting the cafe with a quiet huff. Whatever had just happened between Izuku and hobo? It made Kota excited for whatever reason. Just what had the hobo called Izuku, and more importantly, who was Izuku truly? Those were questions Kota would want to answer on his own one day, but there was one thing he did know. This cafe would be 1,000 times more exciting than anything his aunt could come up for him. Izawa wasn't sure who he should call. He had just met a professional analyst who had been in the game for about 10 years now, and Nezu had no idea this girl existed. And on the other hand, she was a very potential threat to all of Japan's society if she fell into the dark side. But that one-eyed green-haired girl was a mystery for a reason. Not only was she a ghost, but she was cunning and manipulative, but had that innocent act down that even Izawa had a hard time figuring out her alter ego. If Izawa called Nezu, he would probably come with him next week, which would scare off a large majority of the scared girl's customers, and Izawa didn't want to be the next victim of her label smackdown. The last hero who had disturbed her business ended up with welts all over his body from being sanked around by a label. If Izawa called Tsukachi, he would probably stay silent about this for a while until things became dangerous. Like if the scared girl sold info on how to destroy Yue. Then Tsukachi would arrest her and her workers, but then there was the big problem of her being a ghost. There was no trace of the girl's previous identity, and since she had a similar quirk to Tsukachi, it was very unlikely they would get any info out of her. After rubbing his temple, Izawa finally pulled out his phone and made a phone call. Hello, Tsukachi. I made contact with the Gray Zone Cafe owner. It seems that she is a professional analyst. I'm receiving a bit of analysis about me next week. If there is concerning information that she shouldn't know, I'll contact you about this again. Oh, and tell me if or when Devil and Angel show their faces in Japan again. Izawa hung up his phone as he looked up at the cloudy sky and couldn't help but think. I miss you, Oboro. This marks the end of What If Female Deku Was Cafe Onward. A big thanks to Sky Uclipse for granting the permission to feature this amazing fanfiction. The link of the original fanfiction is in the description below. Please like the video and subscribe to Deku Universe for more interesting stories. Thank you and see you soon.